Disruptors, and welcome back to another episode of Mindset Mastery Moments. I have a radiant, beautiful guest here with me who I can't wait to share so much. We're always working with some of the most influential thought leaders around the space of transformation, mindset, leadership, entrepreneurship. And today we offer no less with Dr. Laura Gallaher. Dr. Laura, thank you for being at Mindset Mastery Moments, and we're so happy to have you.
Thank you so much. You have me beaming, Dr.
I'm not even done. Let me go ahead. I didn't tell. Well, we were having a good time because I'm in a silly mood. We have to tell our friends, listeners, and viewers a little bit about you. Dr. Laura Gallaher is an organizational psychologist. That's the thing. I should have been when I grow up, but I didn't actually go that path. But I get to do it anyway. She's also a professional speaker, a best-selling author of Missing Links, launching a high-performing company culture. You all know we get into that every now and then because where we work and who we work with really matters in our lives. She's worked with some of the world's biggest organizations, and I recently got the book, Missing Links, and she has served NASA. She has served Disney, Yahoo, and she keeps helping great organizations both in the United States and around the world to transform their company culture through radical self-acceptance, self-awareness, and leadership transformation. So you all know we're diving into self-acceptance for high achievers and for those who are on the pathway of putting yourself in a space of entrepreneurship or just really revolutionizing the way they lead. Dr. Laura, again, welcome to the show. And you're ready for the detox. So let the stress go and build thriving company cultures and just altogether becoming better people. So tell us about who you are, what you do, and why do you do it?
I am somebody who's really passionate about inspiring introspection. And I'd love to share some of my history that really sparked that within me.
Oh, yeah.
So you mentioned the book, The Missing Links, Launching a High-Performing Company Culture. And we use the language of launching because a lot of what we're talking about in the book actually goes back to my experience with NASA that you mentioned. So, Dr. Whyte, do you remember when the Columbia space shuttle disaster happened in 2003?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I had a moment because I'm a big space junkie.
Oh, yeah.
So I had a moment when I started reading the book last week. I was like, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. And, a lot of people think about Challenger from the 80s. People think about the accident where the space shuttle was lost during the launch. Columbia was different, though. Columbia was lost on re-entry.
Yes.
So that happened in 2003. And just very briefly, if your listeners don't know, because I didn't know before I started working with NASA, there was a piece of foam that fell off of the external tank during the launch and it hit the orbiter, which actually had been happening for years, but never previously posed a safety threat. And so there were a few teams around the agency that were aware of this foam strike, is what it was called. And they were concerned, but a higher governing body had said, we're not worrying about foam strikes during the mission. It's something to worry about during reprocessing, where we want to make sure the shuttle is ready for the next launch.
Right.
And so they were unaware of how much damage Columbia had. So unfortunately, they gave Columbia the green light to come back to Earth at the end of their mission. And that's when NASA lost the astronauts. Yeah. And the investigation outlined all of that, the technical elements of what happened. But they said NASA's culture was as much to blame for the accident as the foam itself. So, I don't know about you, but I have an idea in my mind then about what that culture must have been like. I'm like, oh, it must be a terrible culture. You must have overbearing managers. You must have disengaged employees. You must have people that just don't care.
Dogmatic.
No. Yeah, but that was not the case. In fact, just a couple months before the accident, NASA was rated the #1 place to work in the federal government.
Yes, I read that in the book. Yeah.
Right? Like so some of the smartest people on the planet. You've got literal rocket scientists. You've got Nobel Prize winners.
Yes.
You've got the most dedicated workforce. These are people that donate back tens of thousands of hours of paid time off because they're so engaged in the mission.
Yes.
And I never once in my 8 years there met a single soul who didn't care deeply about the lives of the astronauts.
Mm-hmm.
So for the investigation to say culture was to blame really raised important questions about, okay, hold on then, what is culture?
Right.
So my business partner, my now business partner,
Yes.
Dr. Philip Mead, was asked to do the culture change at Kennedy Space Center here in Florida. And he learned that organizational psychology is this whole field that exists to help leaders understand, explain, and predict behavior at work.
Yeah.
He hired me and a team of organizational psychologists to come in and work with him on the culture there at Kennedy Space Center.
Mm-hmm.
And the primary thing that we were working on was how can we really equip these leaders to create a sense of psychological safety? Are you familiar with that term?
Yes. Psychological safety. Yes. I
used to
have
be so
not
popular.
spent enough time in it, and this is my doorway.
Yeah,
But I'm aware of it.
and it's been around since 1999. Dr.
Right.
Amy Edmondson coined it, and so it was really popular for a while, and then it kind of faded. And then Google was doing all of this research internally, and they called it Project Aristotle. There was a big New York Times piece on it. And they were studying what makes teams effective. You know, is it having diversity on the team? Is it about education? Is it about years of experience? Does it matter what field they're in? And the biggest predictor was some kind of je ne sais quoi, but they didn't know what it was.
They didn't know what it was.
But then they realized, oh, it's psychological safety. And this is a whole construct.
Is it like how we use it in a personal development space where someone is good for your nervous system?
Yes.
That's psychological safety, right? Right.
It
That's
really is.
where I was introduced to it. Yeah. And
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, I love that you have that parallel. And it kind of breaks my heart. Like people used to know that term when I would ask a room who's heard of this. And, you know, now in 2025, people just don't know it anymore. And I'm like, this term is so important, y'all. It's still one of the biggest predictors of team success.
See,
Psychological safety.
to be in the corporate space is something that we're not connected to it if we don't even know. And I'm saying we as a collective, if we're unaware of what that is, I feel like we dance around that psychological safety, but not enough, talking about emotionally intelligent leadership.
Yes.
But this is specific. And this is something that from hearing you, and I know, preempted that you're going to take us down a journey of a whole lot of that we are unaware of. So tune in, guys. Go get your beverage, especially if you're a leader. You can sip if you need to. You can sip. But we want you to make sure you're in a space of accountability and self-awareness in this process. Not blame games, no blame games, just self-awareness. See where you are. Follow along. Copy it. Go ahead, Dr. Laura. Psychological safety.
Yes. And so psychological safety is really, are the leaders creating the kind of environment where people are willing to be vulnerable? And I'll give you some really practical examples of vulnerability, because I'm not talking about people sharing about daddy issues from, when they were 7 years old. I'm not talking about that. That can actually be effective and great, but I'm just talking about the basics, like the vulnerability of admitting when you've made a mistake, the vulnerability of admitting if you don't understand what's going on,
or what's required of you.
Yeah, the vulnerability of giving feedback to somebody, the vulnerability to receive feedback.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were working on this concept of psychological safety. And I think that I built a pretty good reputation internally. I loved what I was doing. I felt pretty effective, especially for how young I was. And I moved into a position of leadership myself. And so there's a story that I want to share with you that was, it was really hard for me, but very eye-opening. I was in a leadership training and I was doing one of those 360 assessments. I'm sure you're familiar with those. Yeah.
I've taken them and I used to love them.
Uh-huh.
I would say like early 2000s. Yeah, that's when I came into them and I was like, oh my gosh, it's so revolutionary, because I'm big into organizational leadership, obviously. Yes. And that was my high, because I don't think I've had anyone at your expert level into organizational leadership. You're the first on the podcast. But those 360 were so revolutionary. And then like I was starting to question them. But tell me what you're telling me, because I know there's a thing that's missing.
Oh gosh, I have so many opinions about them now.
As I studied psychology, I did business. I was a business major, but I took all the psychology I could, both in my degrees and also just on my own, because it's important.
It's so useful too, in my experience. Like I fell in love with psychology my freshman year of college because like I never wanted to sell my textbook back at the end of my psych class. I was like, I'm keeping this. This is so interesting.
I dragged some to the US. I have some that I'm going to part with in a couple of months. Because I can buy them, but I'm going to give them to a library because I brought them from South America. I had them since I was a teenager. I used to read psychology books like people read romance novels.
Yeah, that's fun. Oh, I know. I still do. I don't usually go. I'm not like textbooks so much anymore for my reading, although I was like literally thinking about looking one up recently. Anyway, okay, so 360 assessments. I've got a lot of opinions on them now, but in this particular instance, I had gotten back my report. It was long. It was like 30 pages, and it's a lunch break. So I'm sitting in the cafeteria of this leadership training session, reviewing it. And I remember flipping to this page where the participants were asked to rate my tendency to do any negative influence tactics. And I'd gotten such positive feedback so far. But on this page, I saw that there were a couple people on my team who felt that I would sometimes bully them intellectually. Oh, gut punch, Dr. Whyte. Like just,
And I take those very seriously. Like, I look forward to it to see where I need to grow.
Yes.
So
I was so horrified. And I don't,
intellectual bullying. Oh,
I don't know what my face looked like, but I met with my assigned coach later that afternoon, who was like watching me in the cafeteria, and she's like, "Oh my God, I saw your face when you're reading your report. It's hilarious." And I'm like, "Thank you for laughing at my pain." I don't know why that was a reaction, but it was very sobering for me because here I am, like PhD in psychology, being coach and consultant to these leaders on how they can create psychological safety. And I was struggling to actually do that for people on my own team. And I didn't know it. Yeah. So that was a huge moment for me, like huge light bulb moment of it's not enough to know. You can't just know what psychological safety is. You can't just know this is what's included in it. There is such a deep level of self-awareness that is necessary for leaders to truly be able to create that kind of psychological safety. Because what happens to all of us as humans, and this is where I think you're going to be like, yes, this part I know. We all have insecurities and we have defense mechanisms that pop up because of these hidden insecurities. They pop up for the insecurities we're aware of too. But there's a lot of these hidden insecurities that we work super hard to keep in our subconscious, and we distort things with defensive behavior, and we can rationalize it, but we are getting in our own way. And so that was happening for me because I was never like, you know what I'm going to do right now? Let me just bully my team intellectually, right? Like never my intention. Yeah. I was passionate. I was
not even subconsciously. It's not.
It's these subconscious behaviors, and especially some of the subconscious, I talk about it now a lot in terms of like energy or vibe, but pragmatically, tone, body language, facial expression, all this stuff that's just, even if you think you're good at faking or hiding that stuff, it oozes out of you and people pick up on something, even if they don't know what it is.
That's the energy and the vibe conversation I can't help but have.
Can't help it.
Energy does not lie.
No.
Your vibe attracts your tribe.
Yeah, it does. Oh, I love that. And so like authenticity is not something that you can fake. And so these defense mechanisms will get in the way of creating psychological safety any day, every day. So that was a very long story that I was telling because I wanted to paint the picture, right? Yeah. Like I knew a lot about the topic. I was actually, I think, still being very effective in helping these leaders, but I felt so inspired to introspect once I got that feedback because I realized that if I am not both self-aware and self-accepting,
Yeah.
then I will never be able to create the psychological safety for my team that I want to create.
Because would that mean that you have a certain level of psychological discomfort of your own and you're projecting that unconsciously?
Totally. There's an element of self-judgment that is actually so harsh.
Yeah.
My psychological immune system works to keep that out of my conscious mind because it would be way too painful to actually let some of those harsh judgments into my consciousness. And so we keep it pushed down, and then we have to kind of distort what's happening in the world around us to blame other people or the situation for our own bad feeling.
Wow.
But it's actually very deep and it's distorted.
It's like distorted.
The crazy harsh judgments we have of ourselves are almost never true or real. The harshest ones that we have, it's things that are not true for anybody. Like, I am fundamentally incompetent as a person, right? Like,
oh, how did I even have a bath this morning?
Yeah.
That's what I tell people. Like, let's not complicate this. Since you are here and you are not good enough to get this job because it wants this. You're incompetent, right? You're
totally.
You're a failure. But then here you are. Got up, got a bath, drove to work, came in here. Now here we are.
I love that.
Yeah, I like it basic, and they're like, but of course I am. You see, if you attach that you win, because I know how hard it is to get out of bed sometimes. Yeah. At 4:30 in the morning, get my workout in. It's not always, let me go work out today, especially when it's 32 degrees outside. No, I want to get a little bit more sleep, So I won, and so celebrating those small wins psychologically reminds me I am a winner.
Yeah. Okay.
And I do hard stuff.
This is why, Dr. Whyte, you got the results you got on the quiz. Can I talk about that?
Yes, you can.
Okay. So I mentioned that self-acceptance piece, right? Yes. And I'm excited to share more with your listeners about self-acceptance. But as you know, we have a self-acceptance quiz. It's selfacceptancequiz.com.
Can I just say, it is so simplistic. It's you just read it and it's your thing if you're jazz or not or whatever. Just do it. And then the details that come back and the reflection and the space where you can celebrate and then be like, oh, but I get to work on this. Phenomenal. And she doesn't pay me to tell you that. No one pays anyone here. I either like it or I don't. Yeah. And if I don't, I stay quiet. I don't like it. I love this. And we're going to be all over with self-acceptance. I don't know how long she has, but we're going to take everything we possibly can in an hour.
Yeah. So good. I'm excited for it.
How did I fare? Where am I laying on the whole process of self-acceptance?
Okay. So selfacceptancequiz.com for people that want to take it. Here's the key thing to understand about self-acceptance, because most of the people that I work with, I consider them high achievers, even if they themselves are like, well, I don't know if I'm a high achiever because they're perfectionists, right? And so they constantly are second guessing themselves. But the high achievers that I work with, most of them hold a belief, whether it's conscious or subconscious, that they have to beat up on themselves in order to grow and improve. They need that inner critic berating them on a regular basis in order to get better. This is what they believe.
I used to be there.
Yes, me too. And so when I talk about self-acceptance, the biggest fear that people raise to me right away is like, oh, won't that make me complacent? They assume that if they choose to feel good about who they are right now, with all of their flaws and imperfections, which is the very simple definition of radical self-acceptance, by the way, being okay with who you are right now, with your flaws and imperfections,
perfect, whole and complete,
and your talents and strengths.
Yes.
That is self-acceptance. Very simple. But they're so afraid that that's going to mean that they won't improve. But this is a myth, because the belief here is that self-acceptance and self-improvement are on opposite ends of the continuum.
They're not.
So
they're two peas in a pod.
They are two totally different dimensions.
Yes.
So the opposite of self-acceptance isn't self-improvement. The opposite of self-acceptance is self-judgment. So you can be focused on your own self-improvement through a self-judging lens, or you can focus on your self-improvement through a self-acceptance lens.
Ah.
And so this is paradox theory. And so in our quiz, we have this 2x2 matrix, very simple.
Yeah.
Right. And so we do dichotomize more of a continuous variable. I'm a psychometrics nerd enough to say that. Right. But it's just to help you understand kind of where you are. So are you low or high on self-acceptance? Are you low or high on self-improvement? And what I always tell people is that the research is very clear. You are going to be your best self. You are going to grow the fastest and have the most joy in your journey when you choose to be high on both.
Yes.
And I say
because
choose.
People think it's a choice to be high on one or the other.
Yes, that's right. They think it's a spectrum, and
Spectrum,
sometimes they'll throw out the word balance, and I kind of cringe because I think it represents a misunderstanding of the dimension.
Yes, this
not
is
like
so
a
fundamental
Yeah,
to
paradox
every
theory.
area of your life.
Coexist. So you, Dr. White, I thought that you might be like a lot of the high achievers that I have worked with, where, of course, you're high on self-improvement. Look at the work that you do.
Yeah.
But I thought maybe you'd be low on self-acceptance just because so many high achievers are, but you are the number one mindset disruptor. And so you're like, no, I know that I'm enough.
It's mindset.
So your result, we call it flowing and growing. And so you are high on self-acceptance and you are high on self-improvement. And so that's what your report tells you.
See, she said it. I didn't. I don't know who I'm talking to, but
I mean, it's
the point is that's the goal. That is,
yes.
I did not understand the psychology behind it, but what I can attest to is stepping into that space. I would say it's been about 3.5 years where I mentally made a shift. It's a long journey. I would say I started about 11 years ago. I was 33 years old when I came into an awareness. And so there's so much talk about self-love all the time. And I love self-love, but for me, self-love is not it's not complete without self-awareness, self-acceptance, self-responsibility.
Yes.
And so I have a talk that I do for women specifically, get your shift together, sis, get your shift together, where I talk about those 4 pillars and how they all need to be true and right and in great standing for yourself to be in the best space with yourself, which then puts you in a state of overflow. Where you pour from a place of overflow and not from being filled. You want to be in overflow, and that's when you start to pour and give to your children, to your mother, to your spouse, to your partner, to your job, to the people you take care of in the community, at your church, from overflow. And you need those 4. Self-acceptance, Joe, has always been the toughest thing with any clients. And because with my jagged edges and all, with my broken tooth, if that's what you're dealing with and all, with a broken toenail, ugly toes, if that's what they call it, crooked nose, if you didn't like it. I am perfect, whole, and complete. And I don't want you to do a mantra or recite affirmations to get there. I want you to work on feeling that, because that's energy. Then those things, mantras, affirmations, will empower you along that journey. But that's a road I went on around age 33. And I believe when I'm going to be a little bit candid here. I'm going to promise you, I'm making this real short right now. I talk about me having to let go of my uterus in order to save my life. And I had a challenge in the test to self-acceptance because in my eyes, what kind of woman doesn't have a uterus? And also I was saying goodbye to the chance of having my own, giving birth to my own offspring. Nothing more clashy for someone who come from traditional gender roles, already went through divorce and dealt with that and worked on my mindset on what it means to be divorced after, all the things. And now we're talking about how am I a woman without a uterus, right?
Yeah.
And weird enough, with all the sense I had, I asked my doctors a lot of weird questions that we won't go into. A whole lot of conversation. But my point is, I was faced head to head with it about 3.5 years ago, and I had a choice. And you have these pivotal moments where you can really slay yourself, or you can decide to give yourself mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, and then continue to breathe and get the breaths and the breaths and the breaths and the breaths. And so self-acceptance for me is breath. It's air. It's my oxygen, because the world gives you all the reasons from the time you open social media for why you're not
Yes.
good enough. I will tell you, Dr. Laura, my health, my body, and everything transformed the more I became
Yes.
accepting of who I am, where I am, the journey I've traveled. And from that place, I can love people. I can forgive people. I can
So your
move on.
relationships are stronger. You have more peace internally. And then
Boundaries are easy to set and stand behind.
genuinely, thank you for sharing those pieces of your story. I think that is so powerful. And I talk about radical self-acceptance as the key to making everything in your life easier.
And you did an amazing TED Talk for the world.
Thank you.
I gotta say. And I was like, oh, I know who Laura Gallaher is. I saw this talk. Like, this was one that I absolutely love, because there's so many different things coming from the TED, but I have my own. When someone brings simple things that are so well needed, and they revolutionize and have the research and everything to put it, but then still speaks it in a language that even a person who English is their second, third, fourth, or fifth language can understand. These are my people. So I met her virtually, and now it's I'm like in a celebrity mode, like my celebrity person, one of my celebrity people, right? So you guys can go look it up. I'll put the link for that TED Talk. I'll make sure the team has it wherever you're watching and listening to it. But Dr. Laura, self-acceptance is you sit on the soapbox, stand on it, you lay on it, you probably have to sleep on it. Why do you say, and what moment in your own journey made you realize that self-acceptance was the key for transformation in all areas of your life? Was it the NASA moment, or talk us through that?
That was a huge moment for me, but I would love to share another story that where it hit me too. So I was always focused on achievement. I think from, high school, it's about getting
That's us.
college, was getting into grad school. Now I'm getting my PhD, and the NASA opportunity comes up. So I'm in school working on the PhD. I'm teaching, I'm taking classes, I'm doing my dissertation, I'm working at NASA. Like, I was working, I don't even know how many hours a week. And so my boyfriend, I told him, please do not propose to me until I finish school, because I just can't.
Don't even think about it. It's going to be enough.
And don't tempt me, because if I'm planning a wedding versus dissertation, I might never finish school. So
exactly.
He patiently waited.
Mm.
But then, then it's all about planning the wedding. And so it was like working full time and planning the wedding, busy. And then we got married, beautiful ceremony. And then it became all about getting the house, getting a new house. So we got a new house, and we actually had a house built, and the number of decisions you have to make when you're doing that, my goodness. So that was so time consuming.
Yes.
And then I decide, so now we're in the new house. And so I think I was 31 at this point.
Oh, you're not 29 now?
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't mention my age. No, I'm actually very at peace with my age. I'm good. I'm cool. I'm 42 right now.
Wow.
Yeah, you look insane.
I thought you were in your 29. Yeah. So you were in your late 20s, because you've done so many great things.
Yeah.
You look young. You could be going back to high school if you want to.
You're very kind. Okay, so I'm 31-ish, and I decide I'm going to start a business. So I still have my full-time job at NASA, and now I'm doing a side business. And so that's the moment. Okay, that's been kind of
and it's consulting, I'm guessing, right? Consulting.
It was consulting. It was this company that I run now.
Yeah.
And it was a Wednesday evening, and after a full day at NASA, I'm now sitting in my home office working on my business. And my husband comes to the door and he says, "Hey, Laura, Patrick and Kelly want us to go to a movie. You want to go?" And I barely look over and I say, "Oh, I can't right now, babe. I'm just so busy."
Yeah.
says, come on, Laura, you never have time.
Mm.
And I said, I know, but it's only going to be like this until. And that was a moment where I realized.
Until when?
I don't know what the end of that sentence is. That's not total BS. Like what? Until when, Laura? So it was this moment where I just sort of felt like my heart sink into my gut. And I realized that I was lying to myself so much. And, he looks at me and he says, if you're not good enough now, you never will be.
Whoa, that's a mic drop.
Big mic drop. Whew, and I can still feel like
that can cost someone a lot of therapy.
Yeah.
Because I guess with the introspection that I do, I'm thinking if someone says that to me, I gotta unpack. That's a sentence that and everyone should take that right now. All our achiever friends that are listening, if you're not good enough now, when are you going to be? I'm almost teared up because that's transformational. If you're in our mindset, then that's a platform for you to just jump and go take off, rocket into the air.
Yeah.
Or if you are not accepting of yourself, you're going to probably bury yourself. It's pivotal moment. What did you do, Dr. Laura?
Oh gosh. I mean, I would love to tell you that I immediately just said, okay, I'm enough. Right. No, it was hard for me. There was so much of my identity that was wrapped up in achievement and so many lies that I was telling myself about what was enough. Yeah. But the biggest thing that I realized that really finally inspired the shift to say, I'm going to practice self-acceptance now was this recognition that there's always going to be something about myself that I want to improve upon. I'm always going to want to grow in some way. I'm always going to find some gap between where I am and where I want to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, do you think any of your listeners are going to hit a point where they say, you know what? I think I'm done. They're not going to do that.
There are some people, or they're not thinking about it at all.
Some people,
the high achiever ones and most listeners who are tuned in to this podcast.
No. Yeah, your listeners, they're listening to this podcast because they are focused on their own growth. They are
exactly. And I just meet random people that are like, I just can I can you and put you in a bottle? I'm like,
I know.
You can't, but you can listen to the podcast where there's even greater people than me. And one young lady today, and she's like, I am so listening to your podcast. I'm like, get ready, because there's plenty more better than me that's on there. That's what the podcast is. So you're going to be good.
Your listeners are always going to find that gap, that thing they want to improve upon. And when I really internalized that, I was like, okay, so hold on. If I'm always going to find some way to grow and improve, then that's a horrible reason to not accept myself right now.
Right now. Yeah.
And for me, that was the biggest thing I needed in my journey, was the mindset shift to say, I do want to practice self-acceptance. And then it becomes...
Because you were aware of what self-acceptance is, and you knew how it worked, but you weren't working it for you at a high enough level. But would you say in that self-acceptance that you had been on your journey, but a pivotal shift occurred at that moment in time for you? Because it is a journey to self-acceptance. Yes. Like you said, I came in high, but I'm pretty sure I can continue.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, see, and this is why you're in that quadrant, because you get it. And I'm the same, Dr. Whyte. I end up in that top quadrant too. And honestly, this is so funny. I will admit this to your listeners. I read the report that I wrote and I was like, this is a little too generous to me. I was like, I see so many areas still where I could be better. Yeah. So I might do a little bit of a rewrite on that quadrant, because I do think that especially maybe people in that upper right quadrant can still see the areas where they want to grow and improve.
Absolutely.
They can feel,
because I remembered, I'm reflecting now, I'm connecting, because I just took the assessment, but now I'm connecting to it and I'm remembering some of my responses.
Yes.
So if I could go back and look at it and see, this one you were in the middle, this one you were close to the top, but the higher extreme, which again, one of my biggest things is to be as honest as you possibly can. Whatever comes to mind, do that. See, I go like this. I go like this. Because when you start thinking it,
don't overthink it.
You're trying to analyze the end result. Now, you don't know where it's going to go, so why try to, right? Mm-hmm. Unless you study Dr. Laura's work and you want to not grow, then you're going to.
It's actually, you know what? It's actually a self-acceptance practice to let yourself be honest, even in taking the quiz itself. Like, just be accepting of your initial reaction and like be accepting of whatever results you get. Because, of course, and I'll tell your listeners, this is a moment in time. This is not an assessment that says this is who you are and you're locked in.
Exactly. Because I can take it 5 months from now, based on what might occur in my journey. I might have to work my way back up to where I am today. Yep. Or it might be that I have grown. You don't know. That's why the 360, they did it annually. And again, we don't want to bash anybody at all. I do still appreciate the 360 and I appreciate organizations that do. But if we brought Dr. Laura in, and here's the question that I know our listeners and viewers are going to want, is for you to define self-acceptance according to Dr. Laura Gallaher, because I want you all to be in full awareness of what she is talking about. I'm pretty sure by now you get it. But walk away with that clear definition, because she is not just onto something. She's been doing some very big impacting in the world with this. So we want to understand that from you and your teaching. What is self-acceptance?
So self-acceptance is being okay with who you are, including your flaws and imperfections and your talents and strengths. Mm-hmm. And that last part's so important. You might remember one of the things on the quiz is asking about your ability to receive compliments or praise.
Right.
So for your listeners, if you struggle to receive compliments or praise, if that's really hard for you, if you deflect, if you feel immediately compelled to respond with a compliment back, if you just feel so embarrassed and say, like, that is a sign of feeling lower self-acceptance. And I want to say this point too. Your level of self-acceptance can totally fluctuate depending on what's happening for you in your life. But the goal is to generate such a high level of self-acceptance that it's not contingent on what's happening in your life.
Come on.
So you can be high or low in a moment, depending on who you're with, depending on what's happening for you in your life. But imagine feeling such a strong internal sense of self-assuredness and self-acceptance that regardless of what's happening for you in your external life, regardless of who you're with, you still feel good about who you are. That is my life goal.
Yes. So question is here. What is the difference between self-awareness and self-acceptance in this case?
Let me speak actually about the relationship between the two, because I think that might help differentiate them.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that you've done a lot of growth work yourself, Dr. Whyte. Do you still have the inner critic in your mind?
Of course.
Okay.
Hangs around. Yeah.
So I ask my high achieving clients to, because most of them are very aware of their inner critic. And I say, imagine for a moment that maybe you're a leader or whatever, but somebody comes to you, maybe it's a child or maybe it's an employee, and they tell you about a mistake that they've made. And now imagine that you talk to them the way that your inner critic talks to you. Like, oof, right? Just cringe picturing that scene.
That would be a bad person.
It would, it's not great.
You need a new job.
Right? Okay. So now the question is, this person that you've just spoken to this way, are they more likely or less likely to come back to you again with that kind of information?
They're definitely not coming back.
They're way less likely to come back. Okay. Your brain works the same way. So when you are really hard on yourself, when you are really self-judging and really self-critical, then your brain actually works to hide things from yourself. It's part of that psychological immune system again. And so the relationship between self-awareness and self-acceptance is that your level of self-acceptance is always going to be a ceiling for your self-awareness. You will not let yourself know things about you that you're going to be so harsh about. And I know that your listeners are probably thinking, I don't know, my critic goes off on me all the time about different things. But trust me, there are really harsh inner judgments that your psychological immune system is keeping suppressed because you're so hard on yourself.
That's interesting.
That's why this journey is so wild. The listeners who have been on a spiritual journey have maybe had the experience of feeling like they're making progress. They're feeling more at peace. They're feeling more aware. They're starting to feel better about themselves. And then something hits them like a 2x4 in the face.
Yes.
What's happening is your self-acceptance is increasing. And so your psychological immune system goes, oh, I can let some of this out now. You can handle it.
So here comes
yes. So then you become more self-aware. And that's what continues to happen. Higher self-acceptance leads to higher self-awareness. Higher self-acceptance leads to higher self-awareness. And that's why the process can feel so much like it's ebb and flow.
Yeah.
You're actually under this beautiful upward spiral.
A beautiful upward spiral. So the spiraling, Dr. Laura says, is more than likely going to be a part of the growth journey. You're okay. You're not dying.
Yes.
You're not crazy.
This is the journey. You're doing it.
This is the journey. We needed that. We so needed that. I don't think we've heard that enough.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't verbalize it. Only you could, because it's like, I just told a colleague of mine, we did an event together, a group of us, and she was mentioning that she's going through divorce and transitions. And I was like, guess what? It's all I said, I promise you, that is your sign that you are on the right track, because everything, the more you become aware of yourself, I couldn't say it the way you were, because I didn't know the psychology, but I know it works. I know that's how it goes.
You're familiar with the
more
journey.
You feel like stuff is just going to craps as you make a decision to truly support yourself and who you are and pour into you and build yourself up. And then from that place pour, the more your relationships around you will seem to fizzle out.
Yes.
And it doesn't mean those are done forever.
So true.
These individuals are connected to a version of you that you have killed.
Yeah,
they would like to resuscitate that version of you every chance they get. And you are interested in having a funeral and all the burial and all that with that version of you. You have to might be the only one at the cemetery. Go ahead and do it. And be fine with it. Love them, forgive them now and for advance, and just keep doing what you do. You might attract a different vibe. They might not. Later on, maybe you get to try it again with these relationships in a different way, because they be redefined based on the new version of you that you've given birth to. But trust me, it's worth it.
It is. It's so worth it. And it is a constant journey of breaking things down and then rebuilding stronger, and breaking things down and rebuilding stronger.
Yes.
And even being accepting of that changes your whole experience. Just being like, okay, this is just part of it.
Oh my God, I love this. I love this. So here's the thing. I love that you say in your work, and you share with us, that a lot of us high achievers, that we never stop to truly ask ourselves, am I actually at peace with myself? Mm-hmm. You talk a lot about this radical self-acceptance. What does it look like on a journey in real life, in addition to what we just dived into? Mm-hmm. For us who might still be like, okay, I like where this is going, but really, what is that going to look like for me? Because there's a group of us high achievers who like to know that if I do step out, I kind of know what I'm getting into. So if Dr. Whyte, Dr. Laura, I do really embrace this, mm-hmm. What is that going to look like for me?
Well, I think that the self-awareness piece is going to probably feel really dominant, mm-hmm. Meaning as your self-acceptance begins to inch up on the spectrum, you will start to understand yourself much more deeply, mm-hmm. And you will uncover things that you don't like about yourself. Like, I know that everybody right now can point to things about themselves they don't like. That just speaks to how self-critical we are, right. Societally.
Mm-hmm.
but you will start to uncover things that you go, oof, that's not the person that I want to be. What is that? Where does that come from?
Right.
And you're going to want to shut it down, but that is actually the very thing that you want to accept. And so, as you know, this journey does not work if you are not willing to truly feel the things you've worked so hard to not feel. And so even what is your relationship with emotions? Dr. Whyte, do you know The Guest House by Rumi, that poem?
No.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's very short, and I'll be happy to send it to you.
Yes.
But it speaks about this house, our body, is a guest house. Welcome all who arrive. And so whatever emotions come, instead of resisting the emotion and thinking, I shouldn't feel this, let it come. If there's anger, let it be there. If it's a whole storm, let it be a storm. And the more accepting you are of your emotions throughout this process, the faster it goes and the more you're going to learn. So I would say work on your relationship with your emotions, because what does it feel like? It feels like a lot of feeling. Get comfortable with crying. And I'm starting, Dr. Whyte, to learn more in the somatic space. And I'm really enjoying that space.
One of my 2025 goals is being more in the somatic space.
It's big. It's such a big area. And I have been trained so much in, the mind and the thoughts.
Right.
We do focus on physiology a lot in our work, but I am learning so much more about how we can use physical movement to move things.
That's what I want to do, Tai Chi, and there's the other one that I was exposed to. I know of it, but this Tantra, which just means touch and senses and physical feeling. That is vibes and energy all at the same time. It's connecting. And I believe when it comes to mindset mastery, you master body, mind, and soul, because they're not separate. And the alignment of it, when we talk about achieving success, when we talk about being that prolific leader or that person who's just, again, high achieving altogether, whatever it is that you seek after, if you really get, I believe there's just been enough of me researching and experiencing people and all of the things and seeing the more aligned you align body, mind, and soul, just a better human experience you're going to have. And so that's where I shift back to where we started. And the reason I love that Dr. Laura focuses here on self-acceptance, and it's always why I've always had a passion for the workspace and the workforce and what happens there. And my way of speaking to leaders is always, it's leader in a ship and they're responsible for individuals. And that's why I love that her work focuses on self-acceptance, which is self, because who you are as a person and your experience is how you lead. That's my theory.
Absolutely.
So why do you think that self-acceptance is so important in the leadership space? And if you take us back to that it was the nature and the type of culture that was at NASA that affected Columbia.
It did.
Why is it so needed for us to be practicing self-acceptance, to be able to avoid the high pressure and burnout of the environments that, it seems to be normal. It's normal for CC executives and leaders and entrepreneurs to be tired and sometimes grumpy and demanding or whatever. That's normal. But it's not normal about it. People
it's common.
Yeah,
it's common. I don't know if it's normal,
right?
Yeah. So every reaction that you have is rooted in how you feel about yourself. So the reason self-acceptance is so important to leadership effectiveness is, in the same way that I got that difficult feedback that some people felt I would bully them intellectually, when of course I wasn't trying to do that. It was self-acceptance gaps within me that was leading me to have, too much of an edge to my voice, being too dogmatic, too rigid in my expression, not listening well enough, not holding space for other opinions. But that was all in my subconscious. And so when you recognize that every reaction you have to somebody else, even if they're, quote, being a jerk, how you respond is always rooted in how you feel about yourself. Yeah. I know. When I learned that, I was like, oh boy, I got some work to do.
Yeah. And that's what, I guess that's been a part of my journey. One thing Mom taught us as young kids, we used to do morning devotions, and then we would do nighttime reflection, like self-reflection, and then set our prayers. I think that's I did an episode in the beginning of the podcast where I talked about how that I thought that maybe, and I realized that's why I'm so eager again with self-acceptance was a hard part of my journey. But then once I broke into it, it's what brings my journey. But it all would come from this tool of, what did you do today? Who did you talk to? How did you talk to them? What results did you get? How did they feel about what you said? And how do you feel about what you said?
Yeah.
And so I think there was a lot of judgment coming, and sometimes guilt, because you're going to pray the Lord's Prayer or the 23rd Psalms, and you're like, you know what? I was mean to what's her name in class today, and that's a sin. And God, please forgive me. I know. That's now in a place of guilt. Even my relationship with God is so different when I accept myself. I'm like, I know I screwed that up completely, but I'm learning.
Yeah.
Can you help me? Next time I'm going to listen, because I know this is me and God. I know you try to tell me not to do it that way, and this is how everything turned out. So I feel really awful. It's an ugly feeling. Please forgive me. And I go to people and ask forgive. But this is my conversation with God. We just talk like that. When I used to go in a place of like, I wasn't raised Catholic. Forgive me, Father. I wasn't raised Catholic, but it was kind of like, like being Pentecostal is like we could talk to God directly, but it was a place of guilt, fear.
Yes.
And now it's a place of like, okay, I see what I did. Help me. I know I can do better. So show me the path. Help me send people. Tell me who to talk to or how I can do this differently. And then usually you talk to people you did it wrong with.
Absolutely. Yeah. You can make amends and you can grow together. I believe that whatever higher power exists is one of love and acceptance. Absolutely.
Pure love and acceptance.
No matter how flawed we are. I mean, either we're all imperfect and let's be okay with that, or we're all just as we're meant to be and it's perfect. So
it's still perfect. And that is a big part of self-acceptance, because I don't want to take you too far there, but a lot of religiosity is responsible for self-acceptance and self-judgment.
Yeah. I think it can be misunderstood.
Yes.
I think it can be misunderstood. I don't think that anybody's
intention
was to be fear-mongering. I really don't.
Yes.
Because fear is never going to get the same performance out of somebody as love
and acceptance.
Yeah.
And we know that. For example, if we deal with a young child and we just start screaming when they drop a water bottle or a glass, that puts them in a space of, that can be something for someone that they just feel like they're not good enough, or they're like, I was told I was clumsy when I dropped things, which I did a lot, and I believed it. Right. And as an adult, I had to learn how to, when someone say, oh, here's this, go give this tray of, drink or wine or whatever. I'm like, you don't want me to hold it. I'm clumsy.
Oh no. Yeah, that was like part of your identity.
It was part of my identity. Now, it's how you receive what's given, but over and over as a child, you start to believe it, right?
Oh, for sure.
And so the amount of work I had to do. And so for me, it's like, you know what? If I drop this glass, it's okay. But chances are I won't, because I'm an adult. I have an adult hand. I have muscles. I lift 40-pound weights, gosh darn it, every day.
Yep. I can do this.
Lift this. And so it's, how can I, and find reasons to, that's where I do the mindset disruption.
Yes.
Find a proof for what you're telling yourself. Like you said earlier, the stuff we tell ourselves are just not based in.
There's so much distortion.
Yeah.
So much. We all have distortion in our self-concept, and our lack of self-acceptance is rooted in that distortion.
Right.
So I think that so much of this work is about coming home to yourself and seeing all the beauty and perfection in who you already are.
Wow. I love that. So as a leader, when I'm self-accepting, how does that affect my people? And how does that change the culture?
So I'm going to go back to that statement and then answer your question. So every reaction you have is based on how you feel about yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So a leader will be most effective when they're making choices that make it easier for their team to feel good about themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And you can probably think about this. I invite your listeners to think about this. Think about a leader that you've worked for that just was not your favorite experience, and compare that to a leader that you loved working for.
Mm-hmm.
The difference is, how did you feel about yourself in that person's presence? Mm-hmm.
That start popping off everywhere.
Yeah. And so as a leader, you cannot directly control how somebody feels about themselves,
Mm-hmm.
but you can definitely make choices that make it easier for them to feel good about themselves in your presence. And that's the key. And if you as a leader are really self-judging and really self-critical and you don't feel good about yourself,
Mm-hmm.
you are going to struggle to authentically create that environment for others.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh, wow. I love that we're speaking to high performance as well in this conversation. Let's talk about stress detoxing for a second.
Okay.
High achievers love to push. We just love to push our limits. But at what cost? Is there a secret about stress that you can share that might completely shift how we see it?
Okay, this is the part where I'm glad that your listeners can't throw anything at me, because I'm going to drop some painful truth to start, which is
I'm here in acceptance.
Stress is a choice.
Mm.
And this is true on a lot of levels.
Mm-hmm.
But let me tie it back to self-acceptance, because that's what we've been talking about a lot of today.
Radical self-acceptance. Yeah.
Radical self-acceptance. So you are only going to feel stress in a situation if you're telling yourself a story that threatens how you want to see yourself. I'll give you an example. I would argue that most of your listeners probably feel like they have too much to do. They have too much on their plates. Yeah?
Yeah, I suppose.
Too much to do. And they say, I'm stressed because I have too much to do. I'm stressed. There's too much on my plate. I'm stressed. I have too many deadlines. So they're attributing their stress to the environment. That's the first thing that's just not true.
You're going to have to tell me why I don't often feel stressed about the too many things that I have to do.
Right. It's an internal response.
Okay.
There's no inherent stressor. There's literally not any one thing that's going to stress out every single human on the planet. Throw anything out there. I promise you, there are human beings who would say,
that is a mindset disruption.
It's so frustrating when people first learn. I was so pissed when I first heard that. I was like, what do you mean there's no inherent stressors?
Yeah.
It's stressful for everybody. No. Okay. So recognize that it's not the situation causing the stress. It's the meaning that you're putting on the situation. So if I have too much to do, what meaning am I putting on that? Is the meaning I am going to let people down? Is the meaning I'm going to deliver subpar work?
Ooh.
And then take those one level deeper. If that's true, what story do you tell yourself about what that means about you? Who are you if you're somebody that disappoints people?
That is so funny.
How much are you judging that? Because it's your self-judgment that's actually leading to the stress, not the situation itself.
So is it that in my journey, I have learned to release self-judgment? Because I have like these long to-do lists that I break down in days and then realize, oh no, you overestimated, and be like, oh, but, and then this is my attitude. So of all the 15 things on the to-do list today, what actually has to get done today? Now that we are today, and there really only so many hours because I am going to bed at 10 o'clock.
Good for you. Sleep.
This wraps up. So who on my list or what on my list has to be done? Because high achievers, we make stuff up all the time about the sense of urgency. That's what I learned about myself.
Yes.
Oh, I want to pack today. I'm moving to start packing today. Why did you put packing today on the list with coaching someone through starting a whole new podcast? This is the conversation one part of me is having. I was like, where did you come up with that idea? Girl, that's not important. Move that off the list.
Yeah,
So it's not a more realistic day. And at this moment, that tomorrow seems realistic. But I'm so forgiving of myself, or just
self-forgiveness is huge.
yeah, I'm so forgiving myself. Like, oh, I was wrong about tomorrow too. It's not that I'm not getting anything done because no one is affected. You realize that you made this long list of what you need to do, and because oh my God, I'm not going to get it done, and no one is expecting you to give them that today. That was you impose it. That
Yeah.
thing is due on the 30th, but you assigned the 20th to it.
Yeah.
Now, it'd be nice, but it's not happening. So move it on down. Move it on down and be fine with it and release it and focus all that wonderful, beautiful energy on really doing a good job on the 10 things that are actually required to be done today, so that who needs to approve it gets it approved and all that stuff. And you'll realize that 10 things was realistic, 15 was not.
Right. And to answer your question, I think, yes, you have practiced a lot of self-acceptance. I think you've learned to let go of a lot of self-judgment. That's why you're in that upper right quadrant, right? From the quiz and from the report.
Wait till it's better.
It's so beautiful that you've done that. And, perhaps as we get closer to the close of our conversation, I would love to leave your high achievers with a tip.
Yes.
That can help them get closer to where you are of.
How did I get here, do you think, though? Well,
I love your self-forgiveness. Self-forgiveness is huge. Your listeners can find something every single day, every day, no matter how small, to forgive themselves for. And you already talked about celebrating small wins. We call that taking credit. That's another thing every single day. Yeah. But here's one of my favorites for high achievers. In addition to a to-do list, I'm not going to tell you not to make a to-do list because I get it. But I want you to also make a done list. Ooh. Actually make a list of all the things that you've done and don't skip over things.
Right.
And at the end of the day, look at how much you've done. I know that your listeners have things on their to-do list they didn't cross off, but look at how much you've actually done. Actually write down all the things that you did. And it shifts your perspective so much.
It really does, especially when you had 5 things or 10 or whatever. And one of the things you actually got done was way more involved than you could have estimated, both on time and resources. And look at it. Oh my God, I did that. And it's done. Celebrate. I mean, I have clips of me saying, celebrate the small wins. Yep. Because here's the thing, for someone looking from the outside, be like, oh my God, you did that in one day. For me, it's like, I could have done it sooner, quicker, because that's what high achievers do. But I was doing this. No, let that go. Let that go. Yeah, girl, I actually did that. And don't wait for someone to notice. You will be like, girl.
Yes. You be your own cheerleader.
Did you believe you did that thing? It was a hard thing you wanted to do for months. It's something you prayed and asked God for the resources to be able to do. Whatever you manifested it. Here it is. And just soak it up. Pour yourself a glass of wine. Whatever you do. Go to the beach. Go in the pool. Or soak in the hot tub and be like, man, I did it. And then the other stuff that no one cares that you didn't get done because you made up that to-do list, you'll get it done. Because you are a person that gets stuff done.
Right. So true.
You're a person that gets stuff done. So what do you think are some of the missing things in how we approach self-awareness today as a society or as individuals? What is missing?
I think one of the biggest things that's missing is our willingness to truly feel the emotions.
Ooh.
We're so fast to suppress and push down. And so that really gets in the way of the overall journey. We keep a lot of things hidden from ourselves. And so societally, if we can change the relationship we have with emotion, in a lot of workplaces, people feel okay with, you can express anger, but don't you dare cry. And ridiculous things like that. So my team, we all cry in front of each other. I probably cry in front of my team on average once a month, I'm guessing. I let myself feel. And it's one of the fastest ways to grow self-awareness is to actually let yourself feel. And of course, self-acceptance plays a huge role in that too, because I need to be okay with the emotions as they're coming up in order to let myself truly feel them and be aware of them.
Great. That's awesome. Dr. Laura, I know we're coming up close on your time, and we're so grateful for your time. The question I have for you, if you had to speak into leaders or high achievers right this moment, what are some of the things you would say for them to get on this journey of self-acceptance to really help reboot or upsurge the culture in their environment, whether they have a large team, a small team, they lead a corporation, or just they have a team of volunteers, or they have a team of people they pay off of Fiverr and Upwork? How do they get started?
Well, I think the most important thing is to recognize the power of changing your relationship with yourself. And so I'd love to bring in a quote that mirrors one of my stories from before, which is, there is no amount of self-improvement that will ever make up for a lack of self-acceptance.
I heard you say that. And that right there, yeah, that is one of your most powerful things. I want you to say it again so it can sink in.
Yes. And I got this from Dr. Robert Holden, so I don't want to take credit. This is his quote, but there's no amount of self-improvement. There's no amount of self-improvement that will ever make up for a lack of self-acceptance.
You can go to all the conferences.
Yeah.
You can take all the trainings. You can do all the 360 reviews.
Read all the books.
Read all the books by some of the most impactful people on the planet. But if you have not mastered the art of self-acceptance, your cap.
Yep. It's going to be a cap for you. It'll be a ceiling for you. So that's what I would say.
That's transformational. You don't have to say a lot. So, Dr. Laura, what does success mean to you now? And I say now because we know that you had been on your self-acceptance journey.
Oh, yeah. For me, success is really about feeling like I'm living my life in alignment with my authentic self and my values. Mm-hmm. And noticing if I'm deviating a little bit, just adjust something, either check in with my values or make a change. It's not meant to be perfect all the time. Yeah. It's just something to notice. It's that North Star. And so if I feel like I'm living in alignment with my values, then I feel successful.
I feel that. When's your birthday?
My birthday's August 11th.
Okay, Virgo? No,
I'm a Leo.
A Leo. I got it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm a Libra. And Libras and Leos have something in common when it comes to how we are. Very much.
I get along great with Libras.
Yeah.
I have, my longest tenured employee is a Libra.
Yeah.
Amazing together.
Yeah, we have very, very compatible like that because we're always on the edge of more. Very, very true. You guys have the fire sign, the Libras of the fire element, I think, is how they did. Some people describe you. Anyway, Dr. Laura, what is the next big thing for you that you're working on, and what mindset you think you need to help you make it happen?
The biggest thing I'm working on is taking so much of the science of human behavior that I've been applying in organizational settings and finding the individual humans out there that I know really want to do this work. I love the work that I do. And I know that there are people who don't work for organizations that will bring somebody like me in.
Yes.
And so my next big thing is really about finding my tribe, right? Finding those people who they don't get to do the organizational workshops with me, but they can sign up for my Stress Detox for High Achievers workshop. They can, I want to reach the individuals themselves that are so hungry for this work. That
are not obligated because it's being covered on their cooperating tax.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah, they're there because they want to be.
They want it. They want it. As a provider, as someone, as a healer, as a light worker, you get more out of what you've been given when people are seeking it and they're going after it. They invest more in you watching them win.
Yeah,
it's legacy.
It feels amazing on my side. You've mentioned in my intro that I work with Yahoo, and last year I went and I did a keynote to maybe 100 or so of their leaders. And then we had a breakout session after.
Yes.
So people had the choice of like 6 different sessions to go to. And I was very excited to see that my breakout was the most popular of all the breakouts.
Yes, I did that recently. Yeah.
Yeah. And everybody there wanted to be there.
Yes.
And I was like, this is so fun.
Yes.
Like, they know who I am. They know what I'm about. They saw me speak and they want more. And I was like,
Yes.
oh, these are about people.
Yes, I launched, and my book is coming. I'd say my best-selling book is coming out later this year because it is. So it's called Shift, SHYFT. And so I introduce my Shift system to a school district in Chicago in breakouts. So, you put it out there. It's my first time doing this publicly because usually I don't go into a big bang with something new that I haven't even done it on a podcast or anything. But I've been working on it. But this framework and how I package it now for my best-selling book and all that stuff is new. So I'm like, I'm going out there. When I pitched it to the event planners, they're like, yeah, we want that. We want that one. I was like, okay, great. And oh my gosh, people were standing outside.
Oh,
Couldn't get in my breakout. And I was like, don't worry, we have another one. Same thing. So I was so excited. And I went to my coach and I'm like, hey, you know what? Just from what they saw, they wanted, it was like, is this the shift? Is this the shift? Is this the shift? And to see your work, because it's a corporate event, 600 people for the keynote, but then they get to choose where they want to go based on what's on the menu,
Yes.
And they looked at the menu like, yeah, we want to eat with you. So I know what that feels like. And that's what I love because, they were hungry for it. And 45 minutes was just not enough for them. And so, seeing them now come into my tribe, waiting for when I put the master class out is just, forget what I make, like seeing them literally take on the journey and being so hungry for the shift in their life is like, that's it. That's why we do what we do,
It feels so good.
Thank you so much, Dr. Laura. I got to give you Mindset Bites to go 3 minutes or so where you're on this camera and on the microphone by yourself without me. What do you have to say to the people that's actionable insights that will help them get their shift and just take on self-acceptance radically in their personal and professional lives? The microphone and the camera are all yours. I'm going to step away.
Okay. I just want you to always remember that quote. I'm going to pull it back in. There's no amount of self-improvement that will ever make up for a lack of self-acceptance. And when you can truly internalize that and you recognize and realize there's always going to be that gap between where you are and where you want to be, that gap stops being a reason to not accept yourself right now. And when you do lean into a radical self-acceptance practice, and I describe that as the key to making everything in your life easier, it is not hyperbole. I promise you, it is real. It's true. It does take work. This is not a quick fix, but I don't think that you're listening to this show because you want a quick fix. But it is absolutely transformational. And it will literally change everything from how you make decisions, how you communicate, your health, how you feel, your relationships at work, your relationships at home. Your ability to achieve goals is actually going to increase. People who focus on improvement from a self-acceptance lens grow faster than people who are working on self-improvement from a self-judging lens. The reasons to focus on your own self-acceptance are so much more than I can even list today, but literally key to making everything in your life easier. So if you're feeling intrigued and you're curious, please get started with that quiz. Just see where you are right now. Be honest with yourself. Be self-accepting, even of the answers that you have in a moment. Selfacceptancequiz.com. Check it out. 3 to 5 minutes to take it. And then you're going to get several coaching emails as a follow-up based on your results to really help you understand more of how have you maybe landed where you are and what are some things that you can do to move more into that upper right quadrant, just like our fabulous host, Dr. Whyte. And thank you so much for your attention. I know that time is extremely valuable.
Thank you so much, Doctor. That was so powerful. And so we will have the link in the description wherever you're watching this, so you can take advantage of it. I love taking it, and I've already started getting the emails. I will be working through it. I would love to see your comments wherever you're listening to or watching this, but also go find Dr. Laura. We will have her social media handles. You can find her on LinkedIn. That's where I'm connected to her. And let her know you heard this episode and it's transformational for you. And take those next steps. Like you heard, she does have these amazing workshops that she does, and you can be a part of those. You can be a part of this work. It's not just for NASA. It's not just for Yahoo. She's opened up the doorway for it. And I am telling you what she said. There's no amount of self improvement that can exceed your level of self-acceptance. And I am so happy for the challenge that her work is presenting to me to find those areas where I can grow. In the meantime, knowing that I'm perfect, whole, and complete, and everything's okay.
Yes.
You get to make choices all over again from this perspective. Dr. Laura, again, thank you so much for being here. If you're listening to this, hold it in your head, drlauragallaher.com. It's Dr. Laura, Gallaher. If you want to just, pull over later and get it or whatever you want to do, it's still going to be here for you as our episodes don't go. We're never taking them down. I don't see why you would. So your information is always going to be here. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, to give us a review. We want to know how you enjoy the episode, and maybe Dr. Laura will make time for us here again if we know that you are loving what she has, and she'll come back and share with us new levels of what she's learning and what she's teaching. Dr. Laura, again, thank you so much. You are a gem. We are so grateful for your work in the world. I am definitely tapped in. Maybe I'll be one of those people that work with you to help my team, because no one does it better than you do. We're so grateful for you again, and thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Dr. Whyte.
All right, everyone, Mindset Disruptors, remember that your mindset is the key to your success. Continue to do the work, make the shift, and stay tuned with us. We'll be back on another episode. Keep in touch with Dr. Laura. I can't help but say that. This is the medicine. Bye now.